Hello, Luke Buckley or Professor B back with us again. In this episode, we're going to take a look at some performance metrics for our usability testing this semester. And if you're watching this outside of the semester, we're building towards performing a usability test on our product, whether that product be writing, we're doing games this particular time, we've done websites, other things. So building something and testing it, but we need to know how well our users are performing well using our product. So we have some metrics. We have levels of success we need to look at. We have levels of failure that we'll look at. Time on task, how long do they take to do it and how do we determine that? As well as how learnable and efficient is our product. So let's dive in and take a look at this short slide deck, and then we'll see what we can learn. All right, in this episode we are going to take a look at performance metrics for our user experience and usability tests. Those things that we can evaluate how well our users did and how well our product performed. Well, the first thing we have to determine is, what do we mean by success? How do we measure time? And what exactly is an error, shown by this picture on the right-hand side? Microsoft upgraded their black screen of death to the blue screen of death recently with the frowny face, and they promise that, well, once we do something, we will restart your computer for you. In my experience, the computer never restarts, and you sit there looking at the blue screen forever, and then you have to take extreme measures. So, a performance metric. What are our performance metrics? Well, the first one is determination of success on the tasks we ask somebody to do. Does it have a clear end goal, and how do we define our success to determine our metric? Well, quantitatively, I guess we could say. How much time did they spend on the task? What errors did we discover? How efficient is the user at performing the task? And how learnable is the task they were presented with? Let's take a look at success first. We can rank success on two different scales. The first one is binary. It's either yes or no. You passed the test or you failed the test. They were able to accomplish it or not. Once we get these numbers, we can determine an average success rate by task or by participant group across the task. You might look at age breakouts. You might look at gender types. You might look at cultural, or country-based issues, depending on how wide your test ran. The other way of doing it is with levels of success. You could say that I'm going to define my task, and they can achieve complete success with the task with or without the narrator's assistance. They can partially succeed with or without the narrator's assistance, and then we can scale the values where they get a 1 if there were no problems, 2 minor problems, and so forth on down to a 4 where they failed the task or just gave up. On the other side of our success pyramid is our failures. We determine levels of failures to see how well that the task was designed or the product was designed that they're doing the test on. So the first level is the user just gives up and walks away, metaphorically. They say, I'm done with this. The second one would be the moderator of the test or the narrator. They call it. Say, well, let's move on to the next task and see how well you perform on that one. The user takes too long to get their task done, or they do something different than you ask them to do. So they complete the wrong task. And that's a failure on the first task, but maybe a success on the other one. Another quantitative metric that we can determine is how much time it took the user to perform their task. It's defined, as you see in the first sentence, the time that elapses between the start and the end. Right? The better the experience, the faster they went. It is a great metric, obviously, for those repetitive tasks. There's some examples there. I used to have a student that worked for me. She was a cashier at Walmart, and she said she was timed for how many transactions per minute she did. The more groceries across the scanner meant the more money in the pocket of the business. And this can be measured automatically if you're using a special software, Or if you're doing an in-person test, it could be done manually with a watch, a stopwatch, the watch on your clock, what have you. We do have a few issues with time on task, though. One is determining when the task was really started. Since we use that talk out loud method, sometimes the user is discussing things in their head, how they might approach the task before they actually start it. That will be something you'll need to watch throughout the performance of your tests. And then also deciding when they really finish the task. I've seen cases where the participant has actually finished the task but keeps going with something else until they say, okay, I'm done. Then it's a call between you and your teammates whether you're going to time what they said or what you observed. Okay? And then there's post-task questions. Again, that talk out loud methodology helps us a lot, but it can screw up the timing. Okay? You need to decide what unit of time you'll use, obviously. Seconds, minutes, hours, days, depending on what you're testing. And then we'll need to learn how to work with time data in spreadsheets or databases. All right, after we have figured that out, then we need to figure out our errors, okay? And when to measure them. We measure errors when there's a loss of efficiency in our product. If you're dealing with a website, you may have a programmer that puts in the words continue, save, file, and next, but they all mean the same thing. That can be confusing to users. Do I want to save, but save means continue and file the data and go to the next screen? So you need to figure those things out ahead of time. We also measure errors when there's going to be a significant cost to the organization. The listed report there from Oracle, they tested a bunch of people and determined that most people will pay a bit more for a better user or customer experience. And in class we did discuss Jared Spool's $300 million increase for a company by changing one word in their checkout process from register to continue. Well, here is a very good example of a task failure. The ballot from 2000, Bush versus Gore in Broward County, Florida, or Florida in general, I can't quite remember. This one's from Palm Beach County. The ballot was very confusing and people could not figure out how to vote for the candidate they wanted. And the pens were also not as good as they should have been because they didn't push out the actual hole. Okay? So we had a very long discussion of pregnant chads and hanging chads and dimpled chads, okay? Determining the level to which we thought the voter pushed their choice. It went all the way to the Supreme Court eventually. All right, an error in pulling up to the fueling station, or if your GPS sends you to a wrong area, those are bad. So what is an error? You can see by this car, that's a bad parking error. But if you enter incorrect data, or you make an incorrect choice, or you cause your users to perform an incorrect sequence of actions, or they fail to take an action that is very critical to their success, that's all an error. Okay? So if we're looking at efficiency, our markers of efficiency in product design and development goes for that as well as your writing, is time on task. How long does it take somebody to read your paper and understand what you said? It should not take long at all if you're writing effectively and efficiently. How much cognitive effort does it take? Is there physical effort involved? And do you have any benchmarks? Okay? You gave the document of the product to 10 people and their average score for some of these metrics were X. You can compare new users to that value. Okay? And the final one, learnability, simply defined as the extent to which something can be learned efficiently. How learnable is your product? If you write a certain way, you should follow patterns that have been established. You have a table of contents, you have page numbers, you have section headings. I mean, all these things guide your user through the document. You use effective grammar, punctuation, construction, tips and tricks. We've been building our toolbox all semester with these. Okay? So that is our performance metrics in a nutshell. It's a knick-knack, paddywhack, give the frog a loan from the updated nursery rhyme. So let's stay tuned for some final wrap-up and comments. and then we'll see what our next episodes have for us. Well, that was kind of fun. We learned all sorts of things about success. We can have binary success. We can have gradational success, where there's with or without assistance, partial success, all the way down to our failure and what causes the failure, time on task. Using that talk out loud method, sometimes even when you're listening to me, you don't quite know when the good stuff starts. So that's what we'll be looking at. It'll make more sense when we dive into the testing. But for now, keep these things in your toolbox, and we'll get them out and use them really soon. This is Professor B signing off, and stay tuned for some more episodes and learning adventures.